Thank you all for confirming that you're able to see the slides. And I'll note that we will have a designated question and answer segment at the end of this webinar. So we do ask that we hold questions until then. If you'd like to submit your question ahead of time, there is a Q&A feature where you can type it out. We'll receive it on our end, and we'll make sure it is either addressed through the Q&A function in the chat form, or we'll uplift it during that live Q&A session. All right, so let's move on to slide 2. And you should be seeing on your screen 2 QR codes. The code on the left will take you directly to the application portal. Our RFP is hosted on the Submittable platform, and this is the platform that we're using to collect submissions. So all applications must be submitted through this portal. Though if you would like to follow along and view the full RFP as a PDF, you can also scan that QR code on the right. I'll additionally put the link to the PDF form in the chat so you all can follow along. Oh, what do you know? I'm able to see the slides now. Thank you, Chester, for that private technical support. Thank you. All right, now I'm following along with everyone else here. All right, so that PDF link is in the chat, and feel free to follow along as we go through the slide deck. Though, of course, these links are available on our website. I'll be walking you through how to find those as well, and these slides will be shared out to those who registered for today's webinar. All right, let's move into the agenda. So starting off by welcoming all of you here today. Thank you for joining us this morning. I am next going to be walking us through the funding opportunity, providing some background on who we are as an organization, and also the Catalyst phase as part of the California Jobs First initiative. And then after that, I'll walk us through the eligibility criteria for the Catalyst Fund before handing it off to Alan Lang, who will be walking us through each component of the application itself, going over the different sections that you will be submitting to and the scoring weights of each of them. Then I will walk us through some of the upcoming dates, the project timeline, and plugging some of our resources, including where you can find them on our website, before we enter that Q&A session and close out. So starting off with the funding opportunity and background. Thank you, Chester. Moving on to the next slide, I want to give you all a little bit of context about who we are as Valley Vision. Some of you, many of you are probably already familiar with us, and many of you may have already submitted to the first round of funding that took place last year, at the end of last year. But if there are any new folks in the audience, Valley Vision is a regional nonprofit civic leadership organization. We're based in Sacramento and have been around for just over 30 years. And our focus is improving the livability or quality of life throughout the capital region. Most of our action is backed by data, by research, by community engagement and collaboration across diverse entities, and creating actionable strategies out of that engagement. We are driven by a triple bottom line, also known as the 3 E's of equity, economics, and environmentalism, so that we can co-equally advance all of those priorities in our region. And we also have a proven track record of bringing diverse groups together to develop long-term solutions to the region's greatest challenges. On the next slide, I provide a little bit more context as to what We Prosper Together is, which is our regional initiative as part of the statewide California Jobs First program. So representing over 200 organizations, we bring together a collaborative across 8 counties surrounding the capital, and together working to build long-term economic resilience, uplifting our community needs, and encouraging investment in the region to create accessible pathways to living wage jobs. This graphic here shows you how the California Jobs First program divided the state into 13 regions. And each of these regions put together a regional plan, which identifies the priorities and strategies for meeting these goals in their region. On the next slide, you'll be able to access that regional plan by scanning this QR code. So our region put together strategies for a thriving and inclusive economy, and this document serves as a shared roadmap for creating that thriving and equitable economy in our region. This QR code takes you to the landing page of our website where we host this report. Though I also want to call out, there are many research products and resources available on this page. To name a few, we have the regional plan along with a condensed executive summary for a high-level summary of the 80-plus page report that is the full plan. We also have the Capital Region Economic Assessment and an interactive data book. So those resources I highly recommend exploring if you haven't already. Particularly, the interactive data book is a great way to get complex data and research in a digestible interactive form where you can modify the graphic visuals that you're presented with to show you exactly what data points you are looking for. So all of those are available on our website, and you can access them by scanning this code. And I'll also be walking through our website navigation so that you can find it on your own as well. Go on to the next slide. To give a little bit of context as to how this very complex plan was put together, the 3 main components would be the extensive community outreach and input that went into it, comprehensive research, including that economic assessment mentioned earlier, which was led by the Brookings affiliated cities GPS team, and our broader collaborative, which consists of our leadership council, community ambassadors, and sub-regional partners. That graphic on the bottom, which is very difficult to digest in this one presentation slide, just shows how many moving parts were involved in making sure this plan was put together in an inclusive and collaborative way. So we're really grateful for all of the partners who were involved throughout that planning phase of this program and setting us up so that we can enter into this phase where we're deploying funds into reaching those strategies and goals. Let's move on to the next slide where I go into this phase of the program, which is the Catalyst phase. So this part of the California Jobs First program focuses on advancing those priority industry sectors that are identified in the regional plan, ensuring that job creation aligns with long-term economic, environmental, and equity goals. So that's that triple bottom line that is the backbone to all of the work that we do. On the next slide, I go into a little bit more detail about the funding goals of the Catalyst phase, which are to invest in industries that will advance environmentally sustainable, future-focused, high-quality job opportunities, ensure workers and disinvested communities are the primary beneficiaries, and advance projects towards implementation readiness, positioning them to compete effectively for future federal, state, or private funding. Thank you, Chester. On this slide, I want to go into a little bit more detail about what we mean by quality job opportunities. So calling out that quality jobs are occupations that meet livable wage thresholds and offer employer-sponsored benefits. We also have promising jobs, which are jobs that provide clear pathways to those quality jobs within the next 10 years. This table here showcases livable wage thresholds for our region. And all of this information is accessible through our data book and the Capital Region Economic Assessment, which is accessible on that code on the left. And what you'll see here is the wage threshold by subregion. So neighboring counties grouped together, with the first column showing what an hourly wage would need to be to meet that threshold of a livable wage, and then the annual income on the right. And I also want to give a little more context into the pre-development focus of the Catalyst Fund. So Catalyst funding specifically is for pre-development project activities, which are early stage projects that need help moving from concept to being shovel ready. So pre-development projects refers to those early stages of project development where you're still determining the feasibility of the project, conducting planning activities, and laying that groundwork to be ready for future funding. There are more examples of what pre-development activities are in the RFP itself, and we'll also be going over them in this presentation. But before we go into the eligibility criteria, I also want to call out that our portfolio of projects from the first round of this fund is available on our website as well. There were 11 projects awarded in the first round with almost $5 million allocated. And these projects span a diversity of sectors, including biotech, clean energy, food and ag, and precision manufacturing. So if you'd like to take a look at those projects that got awarded in the first round, you can find them on our website or by scanning this QR code. And then I believe we're moving into the eligibility criteria. So for this, I'll be going over what the requirements are in order to be considered as a proposer for this fund. And all of these are also available on the RFP on that first page as a eligibility checklist that you can review for yourself. So let's move on to the next slide. Starting off with our service area, here you see the 8 counties that make up the We Prosper Together Capital Region. Want to call out that only projects located in or directly benefiting these counties are eligible for consideration. So that includes the counties of Colusa, El Dorado, Nevada, Placer, Sacramento, Sutter, Yolo, and Yuba. Next slide, please. Next, moving into the organization types that are eligible to apply for funding, you'll see a list here, which includes nonprofit organizations, academic institutions, community foundations, NGOs, local governments, and labor organizations. Specifically want to call out that for-profit businesses are not eligible to lead an application. They are able to act as a partner on a project, but that lead applicant cannot be a for-profit business. If you have any questions on whether your organization is eligible, please feel free to contact us and we'll make sure that you have the clarity you need. All right, next, going back into that pre-development focus of the Catalyst Fund, these 2 definitions are provided by the state to categorize what would be considered a pre-development project. So these terms exploratory and last mile are coming directly from the California Jobs First program, labeling them as exploratory projects being those early stage projects that are focused on assessing feasibility and developing plans for future work. And last mile projects maybe have already completed those planning or feasibility activities, but still have a few more actions necessary to become ready for implementation. This is a huge emphasis for this application. We cannot fund any projects that are ready for implementation. These pre-planning or pre-development activities are the focus of the Catalyst Fund. So to go into more detail on the next slide, we have some examples of pre-development activities. So these categories are what we have identified as eligible pre-development projects for this fund, starting with planning and feasibility, which are activities that assess a project's viability. Capacity building activities include investments to strengthen the project team's ability to plan and execute the project effectively. Financial and legal frameworks refers to costs related to setting up financial and/or legal structures. And pilot projects, which are scalable test projects that demonstrate innovative workforce pathways in priority industry sectors, leading to high-quality jobs for disinvested communities. I want to call out for this category in particular, it must be clearly identified as a pilot that can ultimately be scaled up or expanded afterwards and has not already been implemented elsewhere. So these are for innovative workforce development programs that need to get tested out before they can be fully deployed. Next slide, please. Next, on these next two slides, I'll be going into the industry sectors that are identified in our regional plan, starting with our tradable industry sectors, which are our priority sectors, with a note there calling out that projects aligned to one or more of these tradable industry sectors will receive a slightly larger point value for identifying with these priority sectors. Starting with business services, definitions for each of these sectors, along with middle skill occupation examples, can be found in the RFP itself. And you can also explore in greater detail in our regional plan. But business services is essentially providing, this could be consulting support, IT support, marketing support, advertising, any of those services in our region that can support businesses, local businesses. And this is a particular priority in our area because it has the highest job market available, I believe, if I'm saying that right. Others can correct me if I'm using the wrong terms. And also with our more rural areas, there's a high opportunity for remote work in this sector. Working lands here refers to our agricultural sector, as well as biomass utilization and biofuel generation. Precision manufacturing can include semiconductor and microelectronics, as well as robotics and machinery handling. And then biotechnology, which is focused on life sciences and food technology. On the next slide, we go over our opportunity sectors, which are our local serving sectors. So a question we get often is what makes a sector tradable versus opportunity? Those tradable sectors are connected to either national or global markets, whereas these opportunity sectors are local serving and therefore determined by characteristics of the region, such as our population. So our opportunity sectors are construction, healthcare, tourism, and creative economy. These sectors are also eligible for Catalyst funding, but they won't receive that priority, that extra priority scoring. On the next slide here, we also call out the criteria that the project must demonstrate direct benefits to disinvested communities within our region, calling out our regional definition for disinvested communities being those experiencing income disparities, systemic racism, racial inequalities, climate change vulnerabilities, historical systemic oppression, geographic isolation, and exclusion from traditional systems of opportunity. On the next slide here, we provide economic equity priorities that were identified in our region as examples of inclusionary strategies to ensure those benefits are reaching disinvested communities. So our economic equity priorities are introduced here below, but they can be explored in more detail in our regional plan, calling out community-centered inclusionary practices, economic inclusionary approaches, and data-informed and transparent alignment and coordination. And then I'll pause here and hand it off to Alan, who will be going over the application itself, each of the components you'll be submitting to, and the scoring weight of each of those.
Thanks, Gretchen. And can I, before I jump into the application requirements, there was a question. I know we're holding Q&A until the end, but a question about can you explain working lands a little bit more? Could you give a few more sentences on that? Just provide an overarching understanding of what's included there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for calling that out. So the working land sector focuses on food, agriculture, wood product manufacturing, leveraging our region's very rich natural resources. So there are emerging opportunities in this sector that include biomass utilization and carbon management. So occupations that could exist in this sector include distribution workers, production workers, wholesale and manufacturing sales, as well as forest and conservation and logging workers, wildfire prevention workers, and product manufacturing from bio-waste or ag waste. If that provides a little bit more context, that's what's included in working lands.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Gretchen. Just thought that one would be helpful as people are thinking about, the next steps in this. Okay, so I'm going to dive into, as Gretchen mentioned, a little bit more about the application requirements. So I'll walk you through, there are a number of slides on this. I'm just going to put up front, almost all the verbiage, all the wording on the slides is a direct cut and paste from the application itself. So I'm certainly not going to go over every word that's on these slides. I'll probably highlight a few pieces along the way. But again, all this information is written directly into the RFP itself. So Chester, let's go to the next slide. So I'm going to begin with the submission process. And as has been mentioned before, we are using the Submittable platform, which is an online cloud-based platform for submitting. So we found very easy to use, able to go through each question by question, make sure you're filling out each one of those fields. And we'll dive into how you log in or how you set up an account for Submittable towards the end of this discussion today. But the big important pieces are knowing that the due date is June 15th. And again, that's going to be 11:59 p.m. on June 15th. So make sure your application is submitted by that time. Anything submitted after that will not be accepted, will not be reviewed. So that is a hard deadline. So make sure you plan accordingly to have it in and submitted by that June 15th timeframe. Within the Submittable platform, you're going to be responding to a series of narrative questions, text box type fill in the fields. There'll also be a couple pieces you're going to need to upload separate forms. That includes a budget narrative and the budget form itself, the work plan with key milestones. And those will be submitted in a PDF format as separate documents that you're uploading within the Submittable platform. And then, as I said earlier, incomplete applications, if you don't answer all the questions, if there are blank fields that are not filled out, if a proposal comes in after that deadline, they will not be reviewed. And those are no exceptions given on that. So very important for you all to know. Make sure it is a complete application and submitted on time. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. With the application, on the following slides, you're going to be going through the detail of what's on all the information that needs to be submitted, what are the different fields that you're going to be adding information to. So as you're going through that, make sure, although there are word count limits on each one of those fields, make sure you're doing a complete job and fully demonstrating what your project is, how you're going to do it, what the qualifications are. So it's clear to our review team, and it will be a panel of reviewers that are looking at these, that they are fully understanding and are able to understand what your application is, what your qualifications are. Can you be successful in carrying forward this project? And does it meet the intent and criteria of the We Prosper Together program? Ultimately, the applications that are funded are going to be recommended by a kind of a combination of what their ratings were, what their scoring was by that review panel that I mentioned. And we're also looking at geographic diversity. We want to make sure that as we're within this 8 county region within the We Prosper Together area, that we're getting funding and projects in each one of those counties and that are going to really benefit the residents of each of those counties. So we will be considering that as well. Next slide. So these next few slides are going to be what you're going to find in the submittable platform when you get there. And it begins with just the basic identifying information. You can see all these bullet points here, your organization name, your federal employer identification number, etc. The one bullet that I really do want to call out in this is that second to last bullet, which reads, brief description of what your organization is going to do with the funds if you were awarded. You want that to be very brief. It does have a 30 word count limit, so essentially a sentence or two. But want that really concise, but an excellent statement of what your overall purpose is. You can think about this as something that if your project was funded, it could show up in publicly facing information when we're announcing who was funded, what are they going to be doing. So do put a little bit of thought into that so it is a very clear and concise description of what your project intends to achieve. Um, and again, all the other information hopefully is very straightforward within this identifying information section. Moving to the next slide, which is the next section that you'll find in the submittable platform, and that is organizational qualifications. There are several bullets that you see on this screen. This is what we want you to speak to. And really the intent of this is making sure that the reviewers and review team can understand that your organization has the ability and capacity and qualifications to fulfill what you're proposing to do. So opportunity to do that and making sure that you talk about what is the history of your organization, what's the purpose, is what you're applying relevant, what you're applying for relevant to that work. Do you have evidence of success in similar past projects that you can draw on and point to really exhibit your ability to do this work? What are the either processes that you've used or systems you have in place that are really going to help with the administrative oversight and reporting on the project, the reporting requirements that would come with the project. So an opportunity for you to explain that and do so again, I'll say this in all these slides, concisely yet thoroughly to make sure that the review team can understand and get a good sense of what your qualifications are. And that will be reflected in the scoring for each one of these sections. Next slide, Chester. The project description. I would call this really kind of the heart and meat of the proposal itself. You can see in that scoring rating, this is our highest scoring category. So in this section, you're going to really talk about what your main objectives are, what are the outcomes that you're trying to achieve, what are the activities that you're going to pursue to fulfill that, the goal of the project. Within this section in the project description, so it's kind of the how you're going to do it, what are you going to do, how are you going to do it. Really want to point out that there are some pieces that we need to have a good understanding of in getting that proposal. The second bullet talks about how the work ultimately will contribute to the creation of high quality and or promising jobs in the capital region. That's what Gretchen described several slides ago, that high quality job, promising jobs, what that means. And again, there's a better, more thorough definition within the proposal itself. So you can take a look at that. We also want to make sure that you describe how the project will mitigate climate impacts. That's one of the driving pieces of this. We want to make sure that those jobs, the work that is being developed or trying to be pursued is going to be environmentally sustainable type work. So make sure that you discuss that climate impact and how that's being mitigated with the project that ultimately is being proposed. And then the next two bullets are really about engagement of disinvested communities. We want to know within this Catalyst project, kind of the pre-development project, how are you going to involve and engage members of disinvested communities within the planning and the design of the project? So be clear to discuss that, describe how that's going to be done. And then ultimately, we also want to know how the project, if successful, if fully implemented, will directly benefit disinvested communities. So be sure to draw those ties within your project description so that it's very clear to reviewers that your project ultimately will fulfill all those things, engaging and benefiting disinvested communities, how it will mitigate climate impacts, how it will create high quality jobs. So very important and pivotal that you describe that within the project description section. Chester, next slide. So then we get into the work plan. Within the work plan, we really want you to provide a timeline of and being as specific as possible, timeline for what your major project milestones are going to be. What are the key activities that you're going to perform? What are the deliverables that you're going to achieve during this project? And then to the greatest extent possible, what are the roles and responsibilities? Who's going to be doing those tasks? Who's going to be responsible for making sure those deliverables are met within your project team? So again, that timeline and deliverables, what you're going to be achieving should be very apparent in the work plan. Also, in addition to that work plan with the detailed timelines and activities, detail out your community engagement efforts. How are you going to conduct outreach? How are you going to engage and work with disinvested communities, historically marginalized communities and populations within the project area? And how is that going to benefit your project itself? So that's what will go into the work plan section of the proposal. And next slide. A little bit more detail on the work plan. What shows up on this slide, as well as what is in the RFP, are just some examples of what measurable objectives or performance indicators you might use to help track the progress of your activities. But it is going to be important to include that so that as the person that is putting forward these pre-development activities, are you on pace to achieve what you wanted? And then from the reviewer standpoint and ultimately our administration standpoint of this project, we have those milestones and those checkpoints and those measures in place so we can make sure that adequate progress is being made and take any corrective actions that are needed. If something needs to be redirected or pivoted over the course of the project, it's helpful to have those measures in place to know, are we on pace to achieve our goals? Next slide. This section, the proposed budget and budget narrative, important for us to know how the dollars are planned to be used. So we do need an itemized budget that includes categories that might be personnel, who's going to be working on it, how much of their time, what's going to be the cost of that. It could be other operations costs, materials, supplies, travel costs, subcontractors. Have that all delineated within the budget so it's clear how those dollars, and both by what it is and how much budget is being allocated for that. So it's clear how the dollars are going to be used. How is that going to be beneficial for achieving your ultimate goals for this pre-development project? And in addition to that itemized and detailed budget, provide a budget narrative along with that explains what those costs are, how the costs were calculated, why it is necessary for the project to be successful. So again, brief descriptions there, but enough that it can see that is this a necessary cost or is it not? And is it a reasonable cost? So that needs to be clear from the review team so that the awarding of points can be done accordingly. We also want to know who the fiscal contact is. So if it might be the same person who is the program lead, but would like a fiscal contact included within your proposed budget narrative. So if there are any questions about the budget, we know who we can reach out to explore further and make sure that all questions are answered before any next steps are taken in terms of kind of an award process. Next slide. References. Would like to know, have at least a couple references that you're providing, a name of an individual, organization they're with, what their contact information was, a very brief summary of the project that was associated with each reference. So how you worked with them, what was the nature of that work, um, so that we can get a sense of, again, how's this similar work or like work been done previously? Do you, as the applying agency, have the appropriate capacity to do that in demonstration of ability to be successful? And we'll also be considering within those references the ability to fulfill reporting requirements, other administrative processes and procedures that are necessary for us to be able to fulfill our end of the grant that we have with the state. So again, looking for references on that with just a very brief description of what your experience with that reference was. And next slide. Um, Documentation for contracting. This does not need to be submitted with your proposal. I'll repeat that, does not need to be submitted with your proposal. But we will need this information if your organization was recommended for funding. So just know that if it's not with your proposal, we would need this before entering into a contract if your project was awarded. We need to have evidence of eligibility to conduct business in California, list of board of directors or governing body, most recent audited financial statements, or if not audited, financial statements covering the previous 12 months. Excuse me. Evidence or insurance certificates so that you have the appropriate insurance, liabilities, workers' comp insurance, etc. So we will need that information and that you are able to get that as an organization. And then it could be additional information or documentation that will be required by the state of California, who is our funder in this project, that they might request. So just kind of an open-ended, there might be some other things that we need to ask for, but really it's those top four are the ones that before we go into any contracting, we would need that from your organization. So just be aware of that. Next slide. And then we have appendices. This is optional, but if you want to provide letters of support, could be from project partners or past project funders, other people you've worked with. Certainly would accept that as part of your proposal that you submit. And then if you want to add any additional supporting documents, could be resumes, case studies of past work. You can add that as well into you'll be able to upload that information into the submittable platform as well. That is optional. It's not scored, but if you feel it's something that really helps state your case and strengthen your case, feel free to add those appendices in if you would like. And next slide. Reporting and invoicing. Just want everybody to know in advance if you were selected for an award. There are some stipulations that will go with that. So it might be something you want to weigh as you consider, is this appropriate? Do you want to apply for this funding? Number one is that awards and funding, I should say, will be distributed as reimbursement-based funding, meaning that the organizations that are awarded will incur those costs of doing that work, then submit invoices, which Valley Vision will reimburse for. So it's not an upfront payment that is provided, but rather reimbursement for costs that are already incurred. Second bullet point, we do require progress reports, which will be monthly progress reports that will come in. We do, I will say, in my own opinion, try to keep this pretty straightforward, so it's not going to be an extreme administrative burden, but is reporting nonetheless. You will need to fill out, progress statements. What are lessons learned, other pieces of narrative information that we'll fill into that, and that will be reported on a monthly basis. And we will need a comprehensive final report at the end as well, so that That is something that you will need to provide a summary of, what your project was it successful? So a final report will need to be submitted as part of this project as well. And then finally, the invoicing will be submitted on a monthly basis and do need to include documentation of those expenses. So things like receipts, invoices from consultants, other things that are evidence of the costs that you are expending as part of this project need to be provided with those invoices to prove that the expense was incurred. So again, just information for you to know if you were awarded that there are these administrative and logistical reporting issues or requirements that are going to take place. So just important for you to know as you're considering, is this the right funding opportunity for your organization? And Chester, if we go to the next slide. The submittable guidelines. You can see what the platform is for where you will be submitting, accessing the RFA and providing your response to that. And that is valleyvision.submittable.com/submit. You will need to you will need to prepare and create a submittable account to be able to access that application. Once you have submitted or provided that, created that account in Submittable, you'll be able to then start your draft, go back to it as many times as you want with edits, changes, go through that. So it's not you get in, you have to do it all at once. It can be done over time. Ultimately, you will need to click the button, essentially the submit button, to make it the official, this is our final report going in. If I will note, if you've already submitted your application, if you have hit that submit button and need to make changes before the deadline passes, you can let the Valley Vision staff know, and we can reopen up editing access to you. Noting here the safe list on notification emails. So Submittable will, over the course of the open grant period, we will send out information using the Submittable platform. So make sure that you're able to receive those notifications and it's not going to a spam folder, for instance. So that will be something that you want to test, just making sure that you are getting notifications from Submittable once you've created that account. And finally, within the Submittable platform, there is a resource center. So if you have questions, challenges, you're running into obstacles, you can use that. And on a future slide, we'll also note that Chester from our team is available to help out with any technical challenges that you might face as well. We have found that the Submittable platform is a good user interface, so hopefully you'll find that as well. And once you log in, it'll be a very obvious process for you. But again, we want to be helpful. If there are questions, reach out and let us know. And this is what I was mentioning. If you do have any technical support issues related to the Submittable platform, please do contact Chester. His email address is here. And next slide. And then, yes, I'm going to turn it over to Gretchen for kind of what is next? What is next in this process? So, Gretchen, take it over.
Thank you, Alan. All right, yeah, I'll be going over just some upcoming dates for the RFP timeline, as well as many of the resources we've referenced and how you can find them on our website. Next slide, please. Starting off with that application and project timeline, the RFP portal was made live on April 18th, last Friday. And today you are all here attending the proposers webinar. I'll call out with more details being available on the next slide that there are going to be 2 virtual grant writing workshops available. They are going to be identical in content and they are optional. Also calling out that attending these workshops does not guarantee you funding, but rather just an opportunity to strengthen your proposal writing skills. So those will be taking place on April 28th and April 29th, virtually via Zoom. And then applications are due on June 15th by the end of the day at 11:59 p.m. We anticipate award notifications will be going out towards the end of July. And the approximate project timeline will have a start date of August 1st, 2025, and run until September 30th, 2026. I will note that September 30th, 2026 is a hard stop for all project activities, and all expenses must be spent by that time before the contract period ends. Next slide, please. So here's a little bit more detail on those grant writing workshops. These virtual sessions will be the first in a series titled Digest, Prepare, and Strategize, being held on the 28th and the 29th, both from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. via Zoom. They will be covering the same content, so we ask that you only attend one of these sessions. But the intention of these workshops is to empower organizations in proposal writing and provide practical guidance on how to clearly and effectively communicate project ideas. Space is limited in these sessions, but they will be recorded and we will post them onto our website. You can scan the QR code here to register for one of the 2 virtual sessions. I will also put the Google Forms link in the chat. That is our registration sign up. And we ask you to also indicate if you are flexible in which session you attend. We're trying to keep a roughly even number at each of these. So we ask that you indicate your availability and whether you'd be open to attending either session or strictly being available for one. Next slide, please. Another resource I want to plug for you all is the Catalyst FAQ. This document is linked directly in the RFP itself. It is also on our website. But I want to note that this document does update in live time. So as questions are sent to our info email, there are questions that are brought up today that we feel would be relevant for the broader public to also know. This document is going to be updated using the same link. So I recommend referring back to it if you do have any questions that come up. Like I said, you can access it at any time through the RFP or on our website, so you don't need to bookmark it, but I'm a big fan of bookmarking documents that I want to look back on frequently. So plugging this as a resource for you all here, which transitions me into the next slide, where I strongly encourage everyone to think of our website as a resource as well. Here I showcase the menu of all of the pages that we have accessible here. And we want this to be easy to navigate, for all of the information you need to be easy to find. So I'll call out that our regional plan, our RFP, those links are all available on the homepage. As soon as you visit weprospertogether.org, you should be able to find them right away. Though we also have a series of resources that could strengthen your context and knowledge, including our About section, which goes over our governance structure. There was already a question that came in through the Q&A about how to engage with our collaborative, including our community and labor ambassadors. All of that information can be found on our governance structure page. And then our funding streams page goes into more detail about the California Jobs First program and the different streams of funding, including the Catalyst phase. Under our Learn category, that's where you can access our research products. We have the regional plan linked there, another research product called the Inclusive Economy Poll, as well as that data book and economic assessment I mentioned earlier. Under Engage, you can sign up for our newsletter where we make announcements, as well as our events page where you can revisit materials or recordings from any of our past meetings, as well as see upcoming events such as the grant writing workshops. And I'll call out a little hidden gem being the latest page. This page will always have the most up-to-date information, including our most recent newsletter edition, as well as right now we're hosting information about this specific funding opportunity there. So with that, let's move on to the next slide. Where I'll call out next steps for us. Registrants for today's webinar are going to receive these resources in a follow-up email, though the presentation slides and recording will be posted on our website on our events page. And with that, I will say, let's transition into our Q&A section. So I see there have been some questions coming in through the chat and some using the Q&A function. I'll also call out that you are able as participants to raise your hand. And if you do so, we can grant you mic access to ask your question live.
A couple of questions that have not yet been answered are there overhead indirect limits or restrictions? Alan, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, the overhead and indirect limit is capped at 10%. And I'll actually in the statement there, that is a hard cap. So if there is more detail that's wanted on that, you can ask either through the Q&A, the chat, or we can follow up separately as well. But 10% is the max threshold on indirect and administrative costs.
Another question is, are scores feedback on both successful and unsuccessful applications provided to applicants? I will say that in the first round of funding, we did provide feedback to unsuccessful applicants. And that is something that we could do again this time, which is just providing the sections that scored lower, which might be helpful to folks. I do also want to address, it was put in the chat, the question, can you share some of the common mistakes and pitfalls that were seen in the first round? Two of the areas that we had the biggest challenges with were links to quality jobs, providing clear links to quality jobs, and also applications staying within the appropriate pre-development activities that are allowable here. So those are two areas that would be important to pay strong attention to. And then as much detail and clarity as possible is helpful. And then are there current plans or desires for future rounds of funding? That was answered in the chat. This round will expend all of our remaining Catalyst funds. There won't be any remaining funds to award out of that funding source. And as of this time, there's not another funding source that we have. So there is not another planned solicitation, although the We Prosper Together effort is actively looking for additional funds to be able to bring to the region. Let's see there. I'm looking at some of the questions in the chat to see where I may have lost track. Could you give some real world examples of how past applicants have done a good job of addressing the economic equity priorities? I think for this, I would say connection to disinvested communities. There are specific questions in the application that need to be addressed regarding that. And again, as much specific and detail that could be provided. At times, broad generalizations do not effectively serve purposes when responding to grant applications. Scores need to be able to have confidence in the organization's ability to do the work, past experience doing the work, and ability to do the work. So I would say clarity and specificity could be helpful there. We're in Davis. Okay, all right. Would an application allow for both planning, designing a project, and then later doing a pilot of the project? Yes. If all components could occur within the established time frame, Michael, all of those activities are allowable. Just to reiterate, a pilot, as Gretchen said, is something that has not been done before and is something that can be replicable later. Can you touch on the importance of how many counties are considered of benefit? It was a small unsecured field in the first round, but the winning project totals highlighted multiple county benefit. That seemed to be a priority. Thanks for the question, Lexi. There are not additional benefits to serving multiple counties versus serving a single county. There's not additional scoring criteria for that or any additional benefit that happens in the scoring. So the applications that were awarded were primarily based on their scores. What if you have a newer nonprofit but have a personal history of completing projects positively? Alan, do you have any suggestion to that question?
Yeah, and it relates to there was an earlier question along the same lines, kind of, newer startup organizations. We do need some evidence of, past experience, and that could be if you have, qualifications individually, track record, successful at other organizations, applying that. That would certainly be something I would encourage writing into the qualifications section of the proposal. The other piece I wanted to note on this as well, I think that this project, the Catalyst pre-development project, I consider it somewhat a good kind of gateway type project. We have a little bit more flexibility than a lot of, for example, if it was exclusively a state funder not coming through us, we don't have nearly as many requirements, expectations in terms of reporting, other burdens that go with it. So I do think it actually is a very good gateway project, that there are, yes, some reporting requirements, invoicing requirements, some track record that needs to be there. But it doesn't need to be, long history of very highly established. We've been doing this for 20 years or even 10 years. So really look for, some ability to prove that you can do the work is really the important piece. So make sure that comes across clear within the proposal narrative itself.
Thank you, Alan. And then Katie, regarding the question, will there be additional funds from California Job First for implementation projects? So the state has released implementation funds directly. And one of our team can provide a link to that information. The first round is currently in process, where a notice of intent had to already be submitted and pre-applications are due today. And it is a unique offering where it's requiring a coalition response. So originally we had thought that Catalyst funds would be offered by the regions, and then implementation funds we knew always would be available from the state, but we thought they would be for specific projects. The way that this offering has presented itself with a coalition response is very different and unique. So we can share a link about what that looks like. The round one is currently in progress. There is a second round that will be occurring in about a year, 9 months to a year. So that could be something to position for. Are remote trainings and certifications to create local or remote jobs considered enough to be considered a beneficial climate impact? Anything that reduces greenhouse gas emissions can be a beneficial climate impact. So that could be listed along with any other benefits to the climate. I'm just going to go to the Q&A for a second because I see questions on both sides. Is there a way to find the other contractors that are distributing funding in other regions of the state? One of our team can provide a link to all the California Jobs First regions and conveners. We will say some of the regions have already distributed all their funds and some are still in process, but we can provide you the link of the conveners, and then you would need to connect with them to see where they're at in their process. And I think, Jarek, Alan answered your question already, hopefully. If not, provide it to us again. What is the average award size? Do you know that, Gretchen?
I will say for this grant, we don't have a restriction on the funding request, but we did recommend not exceeding a funding request of $1 million. So our range of projects in the first round, I believe, on the low end was almost around 300,000, and then on the upper end, reaching that $1 million fund.
Thank you. Rochelle, your question about providing additional examples on climate impact piece. What I'll say to you is that we believe that this state program was modeled after some components of the state's High Road Training Partnership Program, which has the three priorities of economic advancement, equity, and environment. And so that might be a companion state program that you could look at for examples. Can you better describe what you consider as exploratory versus last mile projects? We would encourage you to take a look at the specifically listed pre-development activities in the RFP. Is a strong plan and providing detailed cost calculations considered too far along to be considered? The concept of a strong plan and detailed cost calculations do not sound like items that would make somebody not allowed to be funded by this proposal. And I think that's all I can provide for that question without more information. Climate mitigation again. Angelina, I would definitely encourage in the addressing of climate impacts when it comes to manufacturing, indicating how projects are not doing any harm and any potential benefits. John, can applications potentially be awarded amounts lower than requested? Yes, that could occur. It may be that the scoring team makes a recommendation to fund the project, but at a lower amount. And in that case, once that decision is made, Alan would engage with you on the contract negotiations. Alan, is there anything more you wanted to add to that, or is that sufficient?
That's totally accurate, Renee. Correct.
Do instructors need to be licensed? We don't have any specific requirements for that, but I would say it depends on the training that you're providing. And you need to make the case within your project scope that you have qualified people to execute all elements of your proposal. Okay, going back to this other one. How do we add a collaborator on a specific grant? I'm going to give that to either Gretchen or Alan is ready.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, very simple. Add a collaborator. It would just be if you have partners that you're working with, write them by name into the proposal when you write that. So just note who they are, a little bit about their background, their qualifications, why they were selected. As simple as that. And I will note as well, this is getting way ahead, but for those projects that are funded, if you're finding you're starting to, roll out your project and need something else, there will be opportunity for budget modifications along that as well. So if you need to add additional partners later, it can be done. So we want as much detail in the proposal as possible, but also understand that things evolve and change as you get a project underway. And we'll work with that if that is the case with the awarded projects.
The question about when going through the data book, some of the data is only defined region-wide and not broken down by county. Can of individual county data be provided? There is a grouping that is, I guess, lower than region-wide, but not necessarily always at the county level. So there are kind of sub-regional groupings that you can use a drop down in the data book for most of the slides. So it is probably defaulting to region-wide, but there are sub-regional groupings. In some of the data, some counties were combined, like Sacramento, Yolo, and some counties were evaluated very specifically, and that is due to the recommendation and ability of our data partner, Cities GPS. And if you need assistance with the data book, please reach out to Chester, and he can help walk you through how to utilize the data in that book. Did I miss any questions? Oh,
One question for about a for-profit business. How would you properly partner with a lead applicant? Follow-up question that was, do you have requirements? There's not a requirement. It would just be up to that for-profit business to identify an organization, a nonprofit organization, a governmental entity, non-governmental organization, any of those types of groups that Gretchen had shown on one of the earlier slides, who is either in the geographic region that you're serving. It could even be a statewide organization. But find an organization that might have interest in your application and have discussion with them about would they be willing to serve as a lead. So it does take some ownership on the for-profit business side to identify who that partner might be.
Unfortunately, the data in the data book is what we have available to you. You're welcome to use other sources of data that you may be able to find. I know Gretchen emphasized the data book, but it is not the only source of information. You're welcome to use any data sources to support your application. Jarek is asking, new organizations are not eligible, question mark. Alan, to you.
Similar answer to one of the earlier questions. If it is a literal brand new startup organization, would still can certainly apply, would need to describe in the organizational qualifications information about whether it's past experience, individual experience, or partners that are also going to be part of this project, what their experience has been, that provides some sort of foundation that suggests that the applicant has the ability to be successful in the project. So it would certainly require explanation if it is a brand new startup organization, but not specifically excluded from applying by any means.
Are there any questions we missed or new questions? You can, since we are now using both, you can either put it in the Q&A or the chat, and we will hold here for a couple of minutes to see if there are any additions. Wonderful. Thank you, Pamela.
I'll call out, I received a question privately about individuals who did submit in the first round. I want to clarify that submitting in the second round will require a new submission. So you are not automatically enrolled if you did submit in that first round. You will have to input your responses into the new application form.
And if I could just add a little piece of detail on that. The applications, very similar, but there have been a few changes in there. So just make sure if you submitted before, a lot of opportunity to kind of cut and paste from that. But do reread the questions and make sure that your answer fully addresses the question in the new application, because there might be some little tweaks on it that are looking for a little bit more information or a little bit slight different angle in the information. So just be cautious if you're taking from your old application and applying it over, that you are fully answering the questions in this version of the RFP.
And I think your submittable account remains the same. Is that right? Yes. Okay. Is it a reasonable conclusion that new organizations would receive lower scores? That is really up to the scoring team, but it may be more difficult to prove capacity if all activities are brand new to the organization. But it would be up to the scoring team that reviews that application. Okay, we'll give it 2 more minutes to see if there are any additional questions, and then we will be providing an FAQ. Is that correct, Gretchen, with the questions that were asked here? Is that accurate? Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
everyone who registered for this webinar is going to receive the resources that were shared in the presentation, any of the links that were requested. That will all go out in a follow-up email along with the recording and slides. And that Q&A sheet that I mentioned earlier will be updated, and it will include questions that were brought up during this session.
Thank you. And additionally, if other questions are sent to us directly, we will continually update the FAQ. So it will be important for you to regularly check back on that and see if there are any additional questions asked that might be able to provide additional information to you. And that will be on the latest page that we linked. Lexi, if it's a new organization under official financial sponsor, would it be best to emphasize the capacity of the umbrella organization or both? Alan, do you want to?
Yeah, I would say certainly talk about both, but in that case, if it is using a fiscal sponsor, more emphasis probably is going to be placed on the fiscal sponsor organization than the new organization. So I think it is more emphasis on the fiscal sponsor, but due to the degree possible, discuss both.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think for the financial components, we need to see the fiscal sponsor's capacity. For if the programmatic elements are being done by the new organization, then you would need to prove both. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time today, considering applying for this. And if questions come up later, Gretchen, where do they email to send questions?
Thank you, Chester. You're one step ahead of me. If you want to reach our team, you can email the info@weprospertogether.org. That will reach all of us. Though, as we plugged earlier, if you're having specific issues related to technical support needed on the submittable platform, those can be directed to Chester, and general programmatic questions about Catalyst funding and this opportunity, feel free to reach out to myself or the full team. Right, well, if that wraps up questions, thank you all so much for attending. We are free to stop the recording, and we'll be sure to follow up with resources shared today. Thank you all.